the McDonald's Juicy Scoop.
Hello and welcome to Juicy Scoop. Oh my God, I had the best weekend I think I've ever had at the Irvine Improv. The shows were so much fun. We had the best time. And then the live Juicy Scoop with Lala and Spencer Pratt, I will be sharing with my Patreon peeps this Friday. So get ready for that. If you are on the fence about joining Patreon, this has got to be it. So you go to heathermcdonald.net, click on Patreon. You have access to the last 3 years of the episodes are all there, all commercial free. Enjoy. Check it out. Little hot topics just to share. Thought this was interesting. So Charlie Sheen does not have to pay child support anymore to Denise Richards. And apparently he hadn't been paying for a while, and they were going back and forth with a court date, and everything was pushed back for COVID. And you may have heard that the older daughter, Sammy, did some TikToks about how she left an abusive home and then lived with her dad and has now got her GED and lives on her own. She's only 17. And then the other girl, Lola, is 16. And I guess Lola is now living with Charlie as well. So, and then I guess Denise didn't even know that she was not there for court. She was working probably on a film somewhere. And it's just very interesting because I remember years ago when they broke up and he was at the height of his career doing 2.5 Men. I think she was getting like $50,000 a month in child support. And so she has to work a lot. She does all these movies. She's successful. He hasn't had a show for a while, so I guess that's why he doesn't have the income to show for it. But you really kind of wonder what's going on. And I really hope that she comes back to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and tells us all about it. And I think there's a lot there. And I think people really would love to see her come back. And I don't know if there'll be a shakeup or not, because the reunion is 4 parts. So this cast, I think, might stay the same for a while. Real Housewives of Salt Lake City has begun. We've been talking about that. And this is sort of interesting if you're watching that. There's this girl, Lisa Barlow, and she's very pretty. And the first season, they said that she had something to do. There was rumors that she was a producer or she had something to do with casting. I've heard everything. There's a new girl that comes on, and that new girl is Lisa's friend. And Lisa doesn't like Whitney. And then she finds out this new girl is friendly with Whitney. And the new girl is throwing this big charity event. And all of a sudden, after the new girl tells Lisa Barlow, oh, I'm actually friends with Whitney, she gets a text from the caterer that Lisa Barlow recommended for her saying, we spoke to Lisa Barlow's assistant, and you know what? This isn't the right event for us. So then she had no catering. And of course, Lisa started to freak out. And I think it's so interesting when there's like a queen bee housewife that then, whether she's a producer or not, which I don't think she is, but maybe she's just like the queen of like kind of gathering the people together. I don't know. But I think she got this girl on the show. So you're on the show and you bring in your friend and you're like, well, this girl's got my back. This girl is going to be great. We're such good friends. And then right away, a couple days into filming, you see that girl's already like confronting you and turning on you and blaming you for killing her party by canceling the caterer. So I'm just saying, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, I have to say I'm really enjoying it because besides the crazy Jen Shah stuff that's just waiting in the wings like a Christmas tree, like it's coming any minute when we're going to see her like actually get arrested on the show, all these other girls on it, it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's like, I think every city's different, you know. I don't think they're the wealthiest people in the world, like the way people crave it on Beverly Hills or whatever. I just think as long as someone's interesting, I think they're all interesting. And of course, Mary's the cult leader. She has her weird church, and she's got this weird thing with her eyes where she's like, She did this one thing where she was talking to Meredith and Brooks. That's the story that's going on forever, that Meredith is mad that Jen Shah liked a tweet about her son being a twink and he hasn't come out yet. And Mary's like, I'm going to tell you something. Hold on. I need to fart. And then she just farts. Thank you. And she continues. Just just so odd. These people are really odd, but very entertaining. And Meredith is like, no, I don't have to put up with her talking about Brooks like that. He's a 20-year-old kid. He doesn't know his own sexuality. He hasn't shared it with me, and I'm not putting up with it. So I'm loving it. Then on Real Housewives of Potomac, this girl Candace she's been pretty awful to a lot of people. But God, she goes after all of her co-stars' looks in such a mean way. And she's after this new girl, Mia, who's very pretty. She's the new girl. And it's like Candace being like, have some respect. Again, like, I'm the OG on this show. You just came on. Have some respect. And she keeps saying to Mia, you and your size 14 feet, you and your giant feet, you and your pimp husband. And Mia's just like, yes, I do. I do have large feet. And I love the shoes that fit around my feet. Like, it is really unbelievable, the mean ass stuff that they say. It's like, I wonder if when they'll ever go after that. Because, like, if a guy said things like that, the way Candace says things about other women's physical appearance, if a man was saying that about any of those women, it would be like a completely different thing. But the fact that she just it just makes her look bad that she keeps breaking down her physical appearance. And she also said the same thing to Ashley. Ashley, this girl just had a baby a month ago. She goes, you and your leaky breasts and your wide ass and your big forehead can take a... I'm like, God. Anyway, she's pretty entertaining, but I don't want to see anyone get fired. But if you're going to get critical about someone's behavior on a reality show, Candace is probably about the worst person I think we've... Anyway, you guys, I'm really excited. Next stop is Chicago, October 15th and 16th. There is only one show that is not sold out yet, and that is Second Show Friday. So get your tickets. We cannot add any shows there, but we are adding in New York. Second Show Friday, I'll be with Chris Frangiola. Those tickets are now available for that show. I think the other three are almost all sold out. So I'm so excited. We'll have 4 shows in New York City, and that's November 5th and 6th. And for the rest of my dates, which is Boston, Atlanta, and Nashville, everything is at heathermcdonald.net. Get your tickets. The rest of the shows will sell out. Irvine was all sold out this weekend, so you do not want to be left out. And now for Dr. Drew is here to answer your questions with his brilliant daughter, Paulina Pinsky. They wrote a book. It doesn't have to be awkward, but let me tell you, this interview I had with them, I made it a little bit awkward. So here we go. Hello and welcome to Juicy Scoop. I'm here with Dr. Drew and now his equally famous and smart daughter, Paulina Pinsky. It's the Pinskys.
I like that intro. It's good. I like it. I dig it.
Yeah, usually I just get daughter.
I know. So here we go. It Doesn't Have to Be Awkward is a book that you guys wrote together. It's a really, I haven't read the whole thing, but I went through a lot of it, and I really like that it's really great advice for anybody who has kids from like 12 to 20 around.
Right. It's really for the kids, right?
Yeah.
Because we made it super accessible. You see her voice all over the place there.
Yeah.
So it's really something that a young person talking to a young person. But we have the parents in mind as we're crafting it. So parents can learn, kids can learn.
Yeah, and it's like, and I think you said first it was just going to be all about sexual consent, but actually there's lots of good things in here, friendship and bullying and
everything. So what happened was COVID.
Yeah.
Essentially, it was the heels of Me Too, right? And there was a lot of confusion in young adults and adolescents. And this publisher, my agent actually had an idea that this would be a good book. And this publisher, yes, great book, let's do it. And I was like, I need a young voice. It doesn't feel right to me, just being me telling them about consent. I need my daughter. She's a writer. She's been in this. Columbia, she was living with that woman.
My senior year of college is when Emma Solkowitz was doing her performance art, Carry That Weight, in which she was...
What is that about?
She was carrying her twin XL mattress across campus in protest.
No, I don't remember this.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
24/7. She carried this mattress
Yeah,
around
2014 to 2015.
Okay.
It was in protest of the school not finding her rapist guilty and expelling him. And so she was carrying the mattress until justice was served. And
Wait, hold on.
Or until she graduated.
So she's like dressed in normal clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And is it like a queen, a king, or a twin?
Twin XL.
Okay, a twin
Not
XL.
just a twin, but a twin XL.
Yeah.
Okay, I think they're all twin XLs in the North.
Yeah.
And she tied it to her back like Jesus cross, like
Well,
Jesus Christ and the cross, or
The first time I saw her, she was dragging it herself. The next time, like every other time I saw her, there were like 15 people helping her carry it. So
from class to class,
So
every day, and
Every
then
day.
go to the cafeteria and eat.
yep,
including
she would bring it.
graduation at the.
She carried it across the graduation stage.
It's commitment. Do you do that when you do
No,
comedy?
but listen. I'm a comedian, so of course I was the thing I thought of. Like I think I've seen that happening on Ventura Boulevard, and sadly enough, but it wasn't a protest.
No, it wasn't
was
a protest.
Just someone's
It's just
mattress.
Los
I'm just
Angeles.
imagining, like, was the mattress like dirty at that point?
I remember it was striped, if my memory
Yeah,
serves.
they always come out strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like
college
that's the
especially.
college. Yeah,
Yeah, but I feel like
And so she did it for months. Mm-hmm. And did they ever make any?
No.
And it was because what the story was that she was,
had a sexual encounter with someone that she knew.
Okay.
And midway through the encounter, it became non-consensual.
Okay.
And essentially it was much debated because she contacted him after the fact and, all the messy things that we do after we've been sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of gray areas with it. And so it was like very easy to be like, but she consented at first. That was her friend, But ultimately, what was important in terms of learning from that experience is that consent can be rescinded at any point during a sexual encounter. And I feel like there wasn't discourse surrounding that idea in 2015.
This is the world she came out of. And so I thought, I need this and this. And as COVID hit, we were like, look, we don't want this thing to be about medical legal consent. This is not a legal textbook. This is like how do young people navigate this thing that's so confusing to them? And we started realizing it's a much bigger topic than sexual consent. It's about how to navigate relationships generally, right? What kinds of things do you need to think about when you're being bullied or when you're being
targeted by a teacher,
whatever
it is,
or your parents asking you to do stuff you don't want to do. And so we came up with this idea of using something that she was obsessed with when she was a kid.
I was obsessed with Elvis Presley as a small girl.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
like third grade, I started, religiously studying books about Elvis.
Okay, it's kind of odd.
And I liked army camo pants and
Okay.
Elvis t-shirts.
Okay.
That's the fourth grader that I was.
All right.
And he had his pack of friends called the Memphis Mafia.
Yeah.
And they all wore TCB necklaces that were gifted from Elvis, which stood for taking care of business. So it's TCB with a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I read about it, I was like, Mom, I need this necklace. And I wore it for 10 years. And I prayed to Elvis before any important event. Ice skating competitions,
Why
tests.
were you so upset? I mean, because you didn't know he wasn't the greatest guy.
I know.
He married a girl that was 14.
No,
I know.
He was 20.
I know.
He was horrible.
He was
Let's be
not
clear. He was
good.
a horrible man.
The way I describe it to my dad
And
before.
died of drug addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make no mistake about this.
Oh, throughout my childhood, everybody's like, he died on the toilet. I'm like, I know. I don't want to talk about it. As a third grader, it was like I didn't really
Okay.
understand the complexity
Right.
of all
All
that. But I view him as sort of how I imagine a lapsed Catholic views Catholicism. Like I have a
Okay.
relationship to God, but I don't support the institution.
Okay.
So he's more deity
He's an
than
institution.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he's definitely. Have you been to Graceland? He is an institution.
So
Yeah.
the TCB
So
though comes
TCB
from what you
From
guys
Elvis.
From Elvis.
And then so we turned that into trust, compassionate boundaries as an acronym to approach all these different relationship issues we started talking
Okay.
about. So for young people, and then lots of examples and quizzes and stuff that young people can relate to help them. The words, things that they can say in their certain situations, prompts
yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the idea was that, if you trust yourself, have compassion for yourself, and understand your own boundaries, then you'll be able to trust someone else, offer them compassion, and respect their boundaries. So
Yeah.
it's an inward to outward expression.
And I think so I mentioned what the book was, and I got some really interesting questions.
Go ahead.
About a lot of teen questions
From the parents or from the kids?
from parents.
Okay.
I mean, this
Yeah.
is my Juicy Scoop obsessed group.
Yeah.
So one of the things that
My Juicy
was
Scoop
was
obsessed
talked
group.
about, and I don't know if you're even aware of this, but
Right.
how do you feel about what's going on with these pills that doctors can prescribe to delay puberty in girls?
Oh.
What is that all about? Because a lot of people, when that question was asked, they're like, wait, what is this about? And it's a big discussion
Right.
in mom groups.
So I'm not sure they should be having that discussion because it's really a medical question. We address gender issues in this book. We do not talk about medical management of the transgender
Okay, well,
experience.
maybe you can just explain
let me
what this is, even if you're not an expert.
So there are puberty aborting medication, puberty blocking medication you can take. So the secondary sexual characteristics of the sex hormones, the sex chromosomes of which you were born, don't express themselves. So for a male, you wouldn't get the jaw growth, the beard, the bone growth.
So that's like if a child is possibly transitioning. But this was more like there are, I guess, younger and younger. I've heard with girls that sometimes girls get their period and everything younger. Sometimes it's the food, it's the hormones.
Yeah.
And so in these mom groups, people are being like, my 6 and 7-year-old is already getting breasts.
Delay that.
Delay it.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
I'm not surprised they're doing that because there has been concerns not so much about puberty onset, but pre-pubertal changes.
Yeah.
So breast development, pubic hair, that kind of stuff, that has been happening earlier and earlier. Now that happens from stress, and it may happen from – it's actually a testosterone-mediated phenomenon. It's from the adrenal glands, not from the ovaries. So – I'm not quite sure what they're going to, maybe aromatase inhibitors or something of some type, I guess. But I'm not surprised people are doing that, but I don't think that's widespread. I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of like the opposite of how so many people hold their boys back.
Yeah.
Like somebody's like, get held back like a lot of years. Like there's like 19 and 20-year-olds sometimes that are like still seniors in high school, which then I would think also affects the consent situation too when you're in high school and someone is well over 18 and the other person's just a sophomore in high school. It's like, how do you address that when they are peers, but now this boy is older because he was held back for maturity in sports.
There's an age of consent. There is an age of consent, and it's against
Depends
the
on
law.
what state you're in.
Yeah.
But
and if he's in most states, if he's in a certain age difference, like if it's less than a year, whatever, then they are peers still. But if there's an age difference that's too great, then it's just against the law. It is, and it's generally the law is a good guide for consent. It really is. Whether it's parents consenting for kids to use alcohol or somebody consenting in this kind of a situation, the law is in that is thought out to help protect the younger person.
Right. So let's say you're the mom of the boy that's now going to graduate,
I would coach
just
him
at
up
his
to stay
19th
away.
birthday or whatever. And so is that boy just not
he's not
have sex with anyone until he gets to college and everyone's 18?
It depends on the state, right?
I just think a lot about, the dynamic of like a freshman girl and a senior boy and how condoned that is in terms of just like healthy relating in high school. But the developmental difference between a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old is massive.
It's ridiculous.
And I feel like, as you were saying, those laws exist to protect the minor in the situation. And so, it's a difficult situation because it's like, you want your kid to figure out how to navigate their own landscape. But I'm also thinking about, like, I was reading recently about, like, child brides and how there's so many laws in this country that allow for that. And so you really
the parents have to consent.
The parents have to consent for that. But people are getting younger and younger in terms of
that's not good.
Yeah.
Child
Heather
bride
may be into it, but I don't think it's a good idea.
Definitely not into it. I know. That's crazy.
It's crazy. This stuff, your brain is not developed, we make this point in the book, until you're 16 to be able to really handle intimate sexual relationships. That most experts agree 16 is the minimum cutoff.
Yeah, and I remember reading stuff in that a woman's brain is like fully developed at 25, but a man's brain is not fully developed until 30. Is that somewhat correct?
They keep pushing those back. What do you think? You there, Peter?
Which is also sad because if you're with someone over 30 and they're a man, they're never getting. That's it. That's the final
as good as it gets.
That's the final product. Don't expect any more.
She looked at you and came up with that comment, Peter.
Yeah.
By the way, I saw your Instagram with his jealousy, lack of jealousy.
Oh,
Gene.
yeah.
That was one of the funniest bits ever.
Thank you.
Do we bring it up? Do we tell him?
Sure. I mean, you missed it. You weren't in the OC this weekend. You couldn't.
Oh, is that
come
where you
see
did
me.
it? Is that where you
Well,
gave
no,
it?
that was from the special. But yes, I was doing new stand up in Irvine this
It was
weekend.
very funny.
Thank you.
So Peter can't be made jealous.
Yes. No, he does not care. But yeah, is that still somewhat true?
What?
That just the brain development too.
Oh, yeah.
Though.
So I think they keep pushing
16,
it back.
Yeah.
I think a very rational sort of 23, 24 for women, 27, 28 for men, for sure. For sure, it's true.
My dad always told me that men are criminals before the age of 30.
No, animals, not criminals. Animals.
I heard criminals.
I think I told you they needed to be in a cage.
Wait, first I have to remind everybody that you are a triplet.
Yes.
And so it's two brothers and you.
Yeah.
And I love the triplet stories. I was fascinated when I became close to your parents about it. And being the girl, like, first of all, tell me, what was it like when you would tell people you were triplets? I mean, obviously you only know to have it be this way, but like, tell me a little bit about that.
It's funny. It wasn't a spectacle kind of. It was a good icebreaker when I got to college because then it was like, whoa, you're a triplet. I've never met a triplet before. But then I kept meeting triplets when I would do an icebreaker. So like someone else in the group would be like, I'm a triplet. I'd be like, God damn it, they got to it first. So it was like both made me exceptional and not exceptional in college.
Yes.
But I always say that like I feel like I was raised like I was one of the boys until like third grade. And so like when we were babies, we all had like a language that we spoke together. And it was literally like gooba de bagada, and we'd like talk to each other. So we didn't speak until we were like 5.
And did that concern you?
I don't know what your memory serves. If somebody
That's what Mom
told you
always
that,
told me that.
no, you were silent until you were 3. You didn't speak at all. And I remember one of the neighbors came over. You had those 2 girls next door with the big dogs, and they went, "When are they going to talk? Why are they so quiet?" And you guys just didn't talk
Till we were 3?
I think it might have been close to 3, but that's again, there's a delay with triplets with language. It just is. No one knows why. I looked into it carefully. Yeah. Obviously, it didn't stick.
Yeah,
You
can't shut me up now.
Yeah.
But yeah, being the only girl in a set of triplets, like both was like exciting because then I get all the clothes and shoes. My mom and I are the same shoe size, so that's like a good thing. But then I also got like the feminine trauma and like the dieting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag. I will say one of my brothers I butted heads with my entire life, and then my other brother would kind of switch between both of our sides.
Triangulation.
Yeah, so there's always one odd man out.
There's still a missing freaking hinge or door jamb from where you slammed the door on Douglas in your bathroom. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
So when which son was I talking to at your house that had the girlfriend?
Douglas.
Okay, so Douglas said something that when he was in college, somebody was speaking about triplets, and they said that there is this other dynamic with triplets where there's always like a leader and
this is me.
Okay.
No, what I said was that there was always the weird thing. I think I've told you this. The weird thing is that once somebody developed a skill that was sort of starting to move away from the pack, the other 2 will have nothing to do with it. It was never, I want to be like my brother and be a good surfer. It's like, oh, he's the surfer, I'm the skin diver. Whatever.
Oh, interesting.
Just boom. So we had a piano player, an ice skater. We had, what was Jordan's thing? Math. Yeah.
Because that's like the Kazans as well.
Yes. Oh, so they were friends. This is how we met.
This is
No way.
So the Kazans and Lindsay Kazan listens to Juicy Scoop, and so Peter is golfing one day. This is like 7 years ago or more, maybe even. And he goes, "Oh, I met this guy, and his triplet daughters go to Louisville, which was my all-girl high school over there. And, they can help us babysit the kids this summer." And I was like, oh, and I, again, fascinated by their triplet life. And they too, she was the opera singer. The other sister was
Ballerina.
A dancer, and the other one was like basketball and became the nurse. So they all had like different paths, not competitive, which is interesting. Yeah. And one of their stories was that like they would go to have the parents wanted to have like once in a while a dinner, and they would put them in this like playpen thing and then they would climb on top of each other, and they kept going, how did one get out? And it was like, how did one? And then they saw that they were like using each other to get out, and I was like, oh my God, these stories are amazing. So then when I was doing one of your shows,
That was the first time I ever met you. I think you were sitting in the green room, and you go, we know some triplets.
Yeah.
We live in Woodland Hills, and I immediately went, what? Woodland Hill triplets? Oh my God! And she goes, yeah, it's 3 girls.
You're like,
they were exactly your age or 1 year ahead, and
Yeah.
they've been babysitting ever since. And I'm like, I was like, because
It has to be the Kazan, yeah.
so yeah, because then you guys were all friendly when you were little. You were like, they were below you or ahead of you?
Ahead.
I had
They're
about
old.
6 months.
Ahead. So
6 months.
so the mom was sort of a mentor to your wife, Susan.
100%,
Got
like
it.
a godsend,
Like
Yeah,
a triplet
yeah.
group.
And so we became friends.
And then
forever.
one thing I thought was interesting talking to you guys too is when you said when you got to college there were lots of triplets and stuff.
Yeah.
And then do you find that medically after the year they like a couple
Correct.
years after they were born,
Yes.
they really encouraged selective reduction of
It
triplets?
wasn't selective reduction so much; they didn't implant so many eggs. So,
Okay.
so super multiples were from like 1990 to 94, and that's it. Oh, and that's it. And so a bunch of triplets from those years. Why are you
Wow.
looking at me like that?
No, because I was just thinking about the Octomom.
Yeah.
Oh.
She just popped into my mind
Yeah.
because somebody brought her up or
She's
something.
supposed to be doing really well, I hear.
Yeah,
Nadia.
and I wanna like have
You
her
could
on the
get- I
show
bet you get
because
her.
I think
I may have her
I
number.
think I oh, really oh my
yeah,
God I really want to talk to her because do you remember this story of the Octomom?
I remember there was like a show on either Cartoon Network or Adult Swim where they did like study breaks.
Yeah.
And they brought her on and they had her like shoot toy babies out, like she had her legs up and they just
Oh
shot
no! That was Silent Library.
Silent Library.
That was a series called Silent Library where they would do crazy stuff in libraries
To make people laugh.
try to crack people up.
And it was
she
the real her that did it?
Yes.
Firing out babies in the
Well, I'm
library.
glad she had a sense of humor and obviously
She
needed
did.
a
What was
paycheck.
her last name?
Nadia. So, let me get this.
Denise Schulman.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
No.
Nadia.
No,
It was something
no.
with an S. It is S, but it's not.
Suleiman.
Suleiman.
I just think you misread.
I don't have it.
Jesus. Shulman.
I don't have
So, anyway, yeah, I mean that was just well, I find the whole thing like fascinating. So, do you feel like you're closer to one brother now?
Yeah, one of my brothers and I actually became better friends because we both have like worked for my parents.
Oh.
And so we have experience being like employees and children, whereas like the other brother doesn't quite understand that experience.
Oh, okay.
And so we've bonded in that way. Like he
So that you
helped
could talk about them
shit.
talk
together.
smack, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because he really prepped me for this book. Like he would call me and be like, you know, how like. I was like, you know, I really want to flourish in this setting. And he's getting a master's in psychology. And he's like, what would allow you to flourish in this setting? You know, like just asking me probing questions. And I was like walking down the Lower East Side with my brother on the phone. And I was like, this is weird, but I'm here for it. My brother asking me how I'm going to flourish in this setting.
Well, all of your kids are like highly intelligent, graduate degrees,
Yeah.
winners. So that's nice. It'd be hard if one was. I mean, I'm just saying it would be kind of hard if one wasn't. Like,
There's
what
an
if
outlier.
one
Yeah.
didn't do well,
Yeah.
or wasn't school wasn't their
Or there was
thing?
some biological problem.
Yeah,
or
I
something.
think that would be really hard. You know, if everyone was such like an academic person, and then there was one that just wasn't. You know.
Yeah.
And that's would be
None of us
difficult.
have fucked up too bad yet.
I'm just thinking about how Susan feels about having 3 hyper academic children around her all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Because she didn't go to college
She went to
until later,
later,
but
yeah.
later in life, yeah. Because she was the bikini model. Right.
Yeah.
You heard the story.
Yeah. But I also think I've also found that too with some of my friends that weren't highly academic, that they are such good moms in that field, and that like take it the education much more seriously
'Cause they wish they
than
had
I
it.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of a
and they
typical
push
thing.
these kids
Yeah.
harder and make sure they're, and I'm kind of like, hey, like my thought is always like, whatever, let's all check back when everyone's 30. And if my kid's doing fine, they're doing fine.
I think
I'm not going to get hung up on that they're not like killing it at 12.
I think they had a double whammy with Susan wishing she'd done more and wanting
Yeah.
that for them, especially you.
Yeah.
And
She told me the
that-
other day that she was like, you know, I didn't realize that I was a producer and I produced you. And I was like, Yeah, you did.
But that's cute, kind of.
She was, I mean, in childhood, like, ice skating was, like, our thing. And, you know, she would help design my dresses, and she would drive me to and from the rink, and she would be there when the hairdresser was doing my highlights and would yell at them if they did it wrong, you know?
And so when did the ice skating begin for you?
I was 5.
And how did you guys choose ice skating as kind of being something to try out?
My preschool best friend was taking group lessons, and I assume that mom just wanted something to put the triplets in.
Correct.
Oh, all three did the
So
ice
we all
skating.
started
Okay.
together. And Jackie and I took to skating. The boys eventually moved on to more
They hit
traditional
their head and
things
both
like
hit their head and were like,
childhoods.
screw this.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just kept doing it. And I did it for 13 years. And, you know,
Competed around the world.
yeah, Switzerland, France,
Oh my God.
Arizona.
So were you doing it
Maryland.
during? Wait, were
Maryland.
you doing it during the
Come
time of Tanya Harding, or was that
After.
After. That was after
that.
you.
After.
This was Michelle Kwan era.
Oh, okay. And did you think that you would? Did you hope to one day like do Olympics, or how far did you want to go?
There was a girl in my class who also ice skated who told the whole 4th grade class that she was going to the Olympics and I wasn't. And when people would be like, I heard you're not going to the Olympics, I was like, yeah, I'm going to college. So it was totally, I never had Olympic
But then one of her
aspirations.
peers did go.
Yeah, the woman who landed the triple axel at the Olympics, we have videos of her in my preschool Esmeralda dance recital
Yeah.
doing beautiful tondus, and I'm just like flirting at the camera, just swirling around, and Mariah's just like
Doing it.
doing it. She was Olympic material from day one.
Yeah. And so then, when did you kind of take off your skates and hang them?
The real reason I quit skating, I did ice theater for like 7 years, which is like Disney on Ice, but shorter
Yeah,
and
how
with children.
fun.
So we
It
did.
was actually more like elaborate, too.
Oh, it was
way
a whole
elaborate. It was a
world.
competing world.
It was a whole world, and
Yeah.
we were like national and international champions. The Los Angeles Figure Skating Club, the Los Angeles Ice Theater. We were kicking ass in the
Yeah.
early 2000s. We did Lion King, we did Muppets, in which I was Miss Piggy and wore a mascot
Oh,
head.
and so then that's where the Miss Piggy, and that's your Instagram and all that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I literally, as a 4th grader, had a baseball helmet covered in foam core and 2 wigs that I just like skated with.
Yeah.
So ice theater was this, you know, comprehensive world and its own thing that I eventually will write about. But the people got to me. Ice
Yeah.
skate, like dance moms is like nothing compared to ice skating moms.
Yes.
Like Tanya with Allison Jenny with
Yes,
Parrot on
so
her shoulder,
good.
that
Yeah.
is an ice skating mom. Like quintessential
You've seen
ice skating
Susan's
mom.
Parrot, right?
No. Susan-
Just kidding.
Okay, wait. I want to get back to that in a second. Okay, so this is when you wrote an article about your skating life,
Yeah.
and this wasn't
My junior year of college.
and this wasn't a fun day for Susan Pinsky, your mother.
No.
Okay, so you wrote this article about your skating life, and it came out, and it was not a fun day for your mother, Susan.
No.
And why don't you tell us why?
My junior year of college, I was about 2 years into my eating disorder recovery, and I was asked to write a piece for my school newspaper. And the opening of the essay is about the moment in which I told my mom about my eating disorder, and the hook of the essay is my mom telling me, well, get your teeth checked, which 6 months later went national when the New York Post...
The day it was published in the Columbia paper was not the day it was put out in the press.
It was published before my birthday of that year, so November 2013, and
February.
and then it was picked up in March, which also happened to be Eating Disorder Awareness Week. So who knows if this person was just waiting for to unleash
Went
the
up,
story.
put it on page 6.
They put it on
New York
page 6,
Post.
and they put the "well, get your teeth checked," and they disregarded the entire piece, which was about intergenerational body trauma and healing my relationship with my mother, and like ultimately the whole piece was like, this is what happened, but I don't blame her. And so everybody was like, so you blame your mom about your eating disorder? How did your dad not see? And I was a junior in college, and I got my hair freshly bleached, and I wore a dress that was like T-length, and I looked like a senator's wife, and I was like, my mother and I have a complicated relationship, and even Dr. Drew's daughter can have an eating disorder too. So I very much went on this sort of trying to save reputations tour, and also trying to be the change in the media that I wanted to see. I think that was an ambitious goal, and I think that's only something that a college student in the Obama administration can think that, because it's like, now it's like, the mediascape is a nightmare. It's like, who can actually make change at this point? But I was ambitious.
So when it first came out in the college paper, did you share it with your parents at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she was preloaded, pre-prepared.
Okay. And how
You're worrying about your friend.
At that time your mom, got to read it and talk about it,
Yeah.
but it wasn't the world didn't know that
Well, they could have picked it up, but they didn't.
Right.
Well, it
I
was
think
on-
they waited until Eating Disorder Awareness
Okay.
Week. I think that's what happened.
And it was so your mom, so you developed an eating disorder during this skating time, which happens a lot with prima ballerinas, things like that, where you really, I remember I had a friend who was a prima ballerina, and, every 3 weeks she had to get the new toe slippers, and then we'd go, can I get the old pair?
Wow.
And we'd all hang it above our door because it was like chic to have these
Yeah.
pink. And I'd go to her house, and she was, doing ballet, and the mom would be making like meatloaf and mashed potatoes and all this stuff, and we'd be doing homework, and she'd be like, here you go, Heather, and I'd go off on this delicious meal, and then she'd be like, Kara, here are your carrots.
Yeah. Welcome to my childhood.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not a prima ballerina because
Yeah.
this food is so good.
Oh, it's
Did you-
inextricable. It's like part of the culture, right? It's like within the fabric of figure skating is this disordered eating. It's like, how else can you throw yourself into the air and land on a toe?
Right,
hook,
you can't. Yeah, you have to be light to go, and you have to be tiny and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
same with ballerinas, I think.
Yeah, I went to a nutritionist, and I think that's where things got murky.
Oh, really? That
Yeah.
wasn't helpful.
I lost weight. But, like my mom felt a lot of anxiety about it because she was paying a lot of money. And so at a certain point, she wasn't allowed in the office anymore. And I think that maybe should have been a red flag.
Wait, why wasn't she allowed in the office?
Because she'd be like, it isn't working. She's eating fries. I don't understand. I'm paying $500 for this. And eventually the nutritionist was like, you're not welcome here anymore. And so it like became sort of this like safe haven for me. And she's like, giving me, disordered eating advice, and it's working, but there's no like, hey, you're maybe doing it too much. It's oh, you're jumping up
And
the
this is
scale.
when you're how old?
12.
Oh, yeah.
Ages 12 to 18. So I just think it's a red flag that my mom wasn't even allowed in the space, which is part of the reason I enjoyed writing this book, is because, we are able to put red flags in there, right? Like there are some things that shouldn't happen, like your parent not being allowed in a service that they're paying for. And, ultimately I feel a lot of animosity towards that nutritionist because I trusted her, and I trusted her more than I trusted myself. And so, I think there's a lot of misrepresentation of what is healthy eating. And I think that a lot of disordered eating gets packaged as healthy eating. And, it worked. I lost weight, but I also developed bulimia. And so it's like,
And then that happened, and you were obviously it was easy to keep that from your parents. They didn't know.
I was such a good kid that the perfectionism of it kind of kept me from ever like seeing it. It was like, oh, this is a means to an end. This is a way to release anxiety. This is a way to feel in control. And it wasn't until I got to college and was taken out of my context that I even recognized what I was doing, because it took, being extricated from the figure skating community and being plotzed at, a feminist college on the East Coast, and looking around me and being like, no one else is like struggling with what to eat at the dining hall. Everyone else is like able to like put an appropriate amount of food on their plate and eat it and walk away. Whereas I was like, someone isn't telling me exactly what to eat, and so I don't know how to eat. And
was that, I would imagine that would be hard too, though, as a family, because if the boys can not only eat with maybe differently because they're boys and their bodies are different than ours, but then also they're not having to put on some skates and do a triple axel
they
or
were
whatever.
football players.
Oh, so then you wanted them to eat.
So they were being fed and I was not. So it was like very clear distinction.
Oh, this is so hard. Yeah.
I like have
that was
memories of
hard.
my brother like, I mean, he didn't realize what he was doing, but like he'd have, a carbonara in front of me and he'd be like, and like taunting me with it. And it's like, I remember that. Douglas probably does not remember that.
No, because most times when people, especially kids too, when they're I was saying this to my son the other day. I'm like, and it takes, even as an adult, I have to remind myself that when you think someone is targeting you, chances are they're not even thinking about you. Like you're not even on their radar.
Well, I also like tormented him. So like to a certain degree, I felt like he deserved, a little bit of just shitting on me.
Yeah.
But, it really, I think the like main way that I was kind of like post, leaving my house, I was like, oh, the way that we were fed in the house was like very gendered in a specific way. Like, and I don't know. I mean, granted, like you eat meat, so
I eat carbohydrates.
Yeah,
which is almost like a kind of feminine approach to eat. I feel like the no carb thing is like kind of a feminized thing.
I don't want to get strokes. That's my main thing.
Yeah,
like grandpa. So
yeah.
But I mean, it's clearly something that like we still have kind of trouble talking about because it's like obviously painful material. But I'm I love talking about it because I feel like the more that we talk about it, the less stigmatized it will be.
I guess my question for you too now is like, what does a mom do if she, doesn't have a problem with eating and has been fine and been kind of lucky to always, be pretty happy with the way she looks and the way she eats. And now her child hits puberty and the child is, gaining weight or not, or she's worried that she's going down. It's like you don't want to then say, you can't have that. But then at the same time, if you don't say that, then are you being the parent that you should be too? Like, that's where I think moms, in my generation, why it's really hard. Because we've seen the Oprah. We may have read the article that you wrote, and we're just like, okay, then just you be you. I don't even want to say anything. I think that's where it's really hard.
I mean, I'm obviously not a parent, and so I think my understanding of what it means to be a mother and be a parent is like your child is like a piece of you, and so like that existing out in the world in this shape that maybe isn't ideal and you're kind of morphing and changing is kind of an uncomfortable thing. I would say, I mean, I think, weight gain is a normal part of puberty to a certain degree, and I think the more we futz with people's metabolisms by like restricting or whatever it is, I feel like the more damage that we do.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything she said. However, you're missing the point, which is that, parents do have boundary issues. A lot of our book is about boundaries. And if you have decent boundaries, you're not worried because the child is an extension of yourself. You're worried because you understand what it is to be 15. They may be 12 and how painful it could be. You're worried about what the child's going to deal with if you don't say something. Right? You're worried about to be a 15-year-old girl. You knew what that was. And I'm going to just shut my trap and set her up to feel those things. It's a really serious it's a really hard balance. It really is.
I struggled a little bit with this too because I was pretty much, my stepdaughter was pretty much living with us full time. And, and I noticed that she, was kind of being weird about food. But at the same time, I'm like, well, genetically, you're not my daughter. So like, you might not, appreciate me saying anything. The boys can eat what they want, So we'd go through a drive-through once in a while, and they'd get the fried chicken sandwich, and I'd be like, and she goes, I'll have that too, And then I was like, I don't know what to do, but because and then I just say, if we get the grilled chicken sandwich, it tastes just as good and it's healthier. And she was like, okay. And then like I'd be like, do you want to split this? Because her menu, she was much more adventurous in eating than the boys anyway. And then eventually, luckily she kind of found her way. And all of a sudden one day she goes, I want to be vegan. And I go, okay, but you might want to try vegetarian first just because it really limits the option. I will get you whatever you want. Yeah. So she's been vegetarian since she was 16.
Wow.
But, then I worry too. That I worry, wait, why didn't you finish that salad now?
Right.
Now I'm like, well, are you sure you're eating enough now? It's like, so it's just.
Being a mom.
It's just
I don't
very,
think people
very
appreciate
hard.
How difficult. And think forget everything else we put upon women right now in terms of having careers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Being a mom, I don't, this is going to sound pejorative, but is crazy making Because you're feeling everything, you're seeing everything, you feel responsible for everything, relate to the what's going on with the kid. It's extremely difficult landscape, and I don't think we give women enough support and credit for that.
Yes, that, and I feel as though you actually did something really beautiful for her, and that you didn't shame her for her choice, but you offered an alternative that she was either allowed to take or not take, right? And so I think lightly guiding your child towards a healthier choice is never a bad thing.
Which is good boundaries.
Yeah. But it's
and compassionate.
It is compassionate.
It's back to our
it's
TCB
super
thing.
compassionate because the go-to mom move is like, are you going to eat that?
This is like we are like our TCB construct because we can always go back to it and go, oh yeah, that works. It works.
Yeah.
Be compassionate.
Yeah.
Be about boundaries.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too, and like talking about this is, obviously we talked about social media and the article, that we know Instagram is bad, for teenage girls, and I totally.
It's increasingly apparent how bad.
Yes,
like it is bad.
But I think something that's kind of interesting is, my sister and I, she's got teenagers too, and so I don't know if she'll appreciate me saying this. Who cares? But so her daughter's a freshman at the school, and they all went to homecoming together.
High school.
All went to the homecoming together.
They all
the like her friends and stuff together,
okay.
like not a date, but a group.
Yeah.
And the older boy who didn't. Okay, and and this is a lot of questions I get is like, especially with COVID and stuff. Like we're actually more concerned that some of our kids are not social enough. Yeah. They're not going to the homecoming dances. They're not doing these fun things.
I hear more of that now.
And it's like, oh my God, and I tell my sister, we just have to worry about who when they're older, and it's okay, and like, your daughter is more outgoing, and that type of thing. And
I've talked to you a little bit about this before.
Yeah.
But they're not getting the skill of relating to other people, forming relationships, breaking relationships, asking somebody out, then turning somebody down, spending time with somebody that you don't really want to be, but maybe get to know. Maybe you do. You learn about yourself and other people through these experiences. They are not getting them, and I've been worried about that for a long time.
Yeah.
And what I've been seeing in particularly the mid-20 males is they become very obsessional about somebody they're attracted to. Like they start stalking typically. They'll start stalking somebody they're into, and they
because they didn't have enough of just a natural experience with girls in high school and stuff.
Correct. We used to get this call on Loveline all the time where they go, "Well, I met this girl. I'm 23. And she's 22. She's the one." But when we met, she wasn't really ready for that yet. But she is the one. So I've been her friend for the last 3 years. I wax her car on Sundays. I've been cleaning her carpet on Wednesdays. And then they'll say this. They'll go, "And now it's time." It's like, no, it's time. No, it's time for what? It's like, it's time. It's time. I put my time in. Now it's time for her to step up and let's go. Let's do this.
And that gets weird.
That is stalking the whole time. That is simple stalking.
We address that behavior specifically in the book because it's problematic and prevalent. Yeah. But also, I was thinking about just like
so get your boys to date.
Get them out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. I'm trying to. And at the same time, I'm like, well, even if it doesn't happen in high school. That's why I really wanted I really wanted my older son, my younger one is still in high school, to have the college experience, live in the dorms, have that, because I really feel for a year and a half, it was no school.
Yeah.
And so more than ever, I was like, and I want you to go to a school where they'll allow you to go to school, and so far it's been good. Yeah. But, it is a concern, and that was one of the questions I got. Okay, so what were you were going to bring up something else.
I was thinking about how we say that you can't practice good TCB online. So like
trust,
compassion, and boundaries.
Okay.
So like when you're in a relationship, it's 1 + 1 = 3. You have this co-created experience that's something that exists outside of yourself. But when you introduce a screen, that disrupts that third thing that's being created. And so I think more and more we're trying to like really drive home that relating to people is a bodily experience
in space. Two people in space.
Like I don't mean
in real life.
I don't mean like a Jeff Bezos capsule.
No,
I mean
in real life. Well, what I was also going to say about social media and the kid, it's really hard. What I was going to say about like your kids not going to the homecoming or not going to the dance, or whatever. It's really hard for the mom to go on social media and see all the kids of their friends going and dressed up and going to things when your kid is not. So it's hard for the kid, but it's also hard for the mom because we're like, okay, that's right, it's not me. But again, the extension of yourself, you feel like you didn't get asked to prom again. And you feel like, and if you were a really social person, it's really hard for you to be like, I can't believe you're not even going to try to go out on Friday night. Like, it's weird. It's hard.
It feels like eating. It's a similar thing with eating,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's very similar.
Yeah. So what do you mean? Like a different relationship with it, kind of? Yeah.
It's that you're worrying about the relating and dating the way moms worry about the eating. It's a very similar kind of a worry. It's very similar.
I think there's probably other things
like that.
Yeah. You know, and then I'm like, oh, these other parents, that got their kids so involved in like a sport or whatever. And if that wasn't the path my kid did I not push it hard enough? Because also I'd watch the Oprah where they'd say, don't push your kid to be in some sport they don't like.
Yeah.
Just say, finish the season, finish out your commitment, but then you don't have to do it the rest of the time, I
have a specific recommendation.
Okay, tell.
A little less Oprah.
Well, Oprah's gone now, but when I was a teenager and stuff, I really would watch it.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things that then when I became the parent, like I'd be like, pick your battles and this and that. And I'm like, I just want my kid to be happy and confident. And then there's this other part where I'm like, oh, did I not sign him up for enough stuff? She
wants to write a book about that, which I think would be very interesting.
Yeah, I want to teach a workshop specifically on childhood sports.
Because when we were kids, there were no club sports, that kind of stuff, not so much anyway. And now these kids were just inundated with these activities.
Yeah, so I want to talk about sports
they have
that you didn't want to do.
They have thoughts about it now.
Relationships to coaches. And then too, like what the trans experience in sports is as well. Like, what does that even mean? I mean, sports are such a gendered experience generally. Like, what happens if you don't fit in the binary? Yeah.
I mean, with me, like, so my family was swimmers, so we would do swimming.
Yeah.
But I wasn't very good in it, And then every time I'd want to quit, my mom would be like, "But you're at the top of your age group," and then she's like, and next year you'll be at the top of your age group. We should joke about it. Well, then my mom got her real estate license and was like, well, I can't take you to swimming anyway. So that was the end of that. And I had to get myself to and from school. But now I wasn't in any sports, which was fine until the day came where it was PE day. And that's when they were still picking the teams to play a sport. Oh. And I'd be like second to last, sometimes last. Oof. And it was just... And if my friend was a captain that day, she'd be like, I'm going to get you by like third or fourth, but let me get like some good people on the team first. I'm like, totally hear you. Just don't have me be last.
What sport?
Whatever it was. I was always last because it was like you knew who were the really athletic people. You knew who were the people that were just okay. And then there were the people that just sucked at sports. And that was me. And I was like, why didn't you put me in soccer when I was 5? If you would have put me in soccer when I was 5, then because I can't join soccer now at 10. Because all these people are killer. And so it's like, and and they don't do that anymore. But one time something happened when my son was younger and, wasn't picked last. And it was the one time that because I'm rarely the mom that like calls the school. And it was the one time. And I was like shaking. And I was like, what people don't get that are not athletic. Would you make everybody in the class stand and do a 15-minute stand-up comedy routine in front of people? Would you make them sing? Of course you wouldn't make someone sing a solo that doesn't want to sing a solo.
Or can't.
Right, or can't. But sports, everyone just assumes that you should be able to do it.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it, then you're just lame. And it's like, what? Like, it's that much... It's for the person that isn't good at it, it's that kind of stress of, I don't want to stand in front of 2,000 people and perform.
Yeah.
And I think 90% of people that are like athletic just do not get that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and so then when you have a kid that's just like, or it's too much stress or it's too much like worrying about, then you want to just take that out. Why? I don't want my kids to stress about anything.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it's like, all right, do we just wait till you're old enough and just get a job and screw that you weren't ever part of it? Just join it, like, or do you just get to a point where okay, now my kid can just go to the gym.
Yeah.
Can go to the gym. They're old enough. They can just get their exercise that way because this is just too incredibly stressful for me, the kid, everybody.
Well, when I think about it, it's just I have a suspicion that the way, particularly when I was in junior high school and grammar school, gym was left over from like the Civil War or something. It was something left over from military, calisthenics and lines, and it was all and marching. It was really left over from some military training for young boys, I think, and it just morphed into these other things.
For my school,
my gym teachers hated me.
My school was just you would play like basketball, volleyball, baseball. You would just play a game.
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit of exercise, which I could always do that. But it was then, why can't you hit this volleyball?
Right.
Like why? Put me way in the back.
Why
please,
can't
dear
you,
God.
Heather?
I would always act like something, or I'd be like swaying in the way back field, praying that the ball would never come my way. Just like.
Yeah.
And then thank God by high school you could be a little more selective and you could take like a dance class or something to get that requirement. But I mean,
this is all the stuff we demand of kids that we don't think about.
Yeah.
And adults demand of kids.
like the day of a PE being just as stressful as a day of maybe when a child has to give an oral report, depending on the child.
Right.
The day of oral report, I couldn't wait. I was like super excited, not nervous at all, could not wait, or singing or whatever, fine. But God, PE. Just can you get me? I'd be like, Mom, schedule the doctor's appointment for during PE. Like anything to avoid this.
I just keep thinking about my fiance because he was the same. He hated PE, and like we went to Hawaii in May, and I like took him out into the water, and boy was that a mistake because he was getting seasick in the water, and he like swims with his knees.
Oh no!
And I learned that day. I was like, oh right, like I am a trained athlete. Like from age 5, I was thinking about how to move my body, whereas he was like playing in punk bands in Louisiana.
Yeah,
and that moment for me when he's puking in the
ocean.
At
age 5, that was a really cute punker. No, just kidding. Just imagine
going hard.
Yeah, at 5. Yeah, but no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, he had other interests, and that's the thing. Yeah. And everyone just assumes that, like, oh, come on,
I think it's very rare that I think we're making progress in this country, but I'm thinking maybe we are making progress. We're letting kids be kids who they want to be.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're particularly sensitive to these things. A lot of kids have suffered because of the demand. We fall in line with these, particular structures. This is good.
Yeah.
Progress.
Okay, so one of the so let me give you some of the questions.
Yeah.
Speaking of the teenage boys.
Yeah.
What do you suggest with the Uggs and the lack of conversation? And did you notice that were your boys always very conversational?
Every boy, and I mean every boy, goes from being these spry, loving, boys to these smelly lumps of flesh sitting playing video game. That's just what happens. And testosterone does that to them. It makes them quiet and irritable. It just does. Just to get them out in activities. If you want to talk to them, do something with them. Shoot baskets, do activity because they will be interested in activities. Sometimes they're interested in rough and tumble play and stuff too. But you got to get them off the couch, do things, and then they'll talk. It's face to face for young male is threatening. And so you have to be side by side doing something together. Cars
are a good place to have conversations.
Cars are very good, but even that can be rough. They actually have to be doing something to really loosen up. And I know people that I have therapist friends, colleagues that only treat males because they keep telling me like to do with male and too complicated. I just pick one gender, X, Y. I do X, Y, and that's it. And they have a basketball court, and they take them out of the basketball court to do therapy. That's what they do. So it is a tough, and they after about 15 it loosens up. They start to get more loquacious and stuff then, but it really is that early adolescence when it just they shift from being spry and delightful to being these. Do you remember that for your kids?
So here's a good question too. Like, how do you just tell this normal as a parent normal teenage angst versus when you should really be concerned?
Yeah, right. We were thinking about writing a book about this too as our next book.
God, you guys have a lot to do.
We do indeed. Thank you, Heather. It's essentially, first of all, it goes on. It's not. It doesn't pass. Like 2 weeks is a good time interval to pay attention. Is it affecting sleep? Is it affecting appetite? Is it affecting grades? Grades is the number one sign that you have a mental health problem, not a parenting problem. Grades. A full point drop in grades, B to C, A to B. That is your surest sign of a mental health issue, provided that it's not AP chemistry or something. It's not
right where you're struggling like with one class, like the whole thing
there's
goes
a drop.
down.
There's a drop. Clothing, hygiene, sexual acting out, experiment, substance acting out, new peer group. All of those. If multiple of those are going on, then that's not a parenting problem. That is a mental health problem.
Okay, and what do you? This one woman asked. Her daughter feels doesn't have any friends. She's 13. And what do you do in that case? Because then I was reading some of the comments underneath, and some people were like, these are adults now, and saying like, I was there. I'm all for taking your daughter out of school and doing online if that's what she wants, finding an online community. Like, no one has to be like suffering this way. Because once they get to college, everyone's like pretty normal and nice.
Yeah.
But it is hard, I think, which is why I think some people didn't mind the whole pandemic thing so much. Other people did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to know more about.
I guess like my base.
They're just saying like what do you tell your daughter that has no friends? Like,
but has no friends is a symptom.
Like really, she doesn't. This girl
why?
that doesn't. I don't know.
That's right. Like, figure out is she choosing that? Is she isolated? Is she being bullied? Is she have a autistic spectrum where she can't make friends, or it's misreading social cues?
I think at one time maybe she did have friends, and right now it's like she really cannot get back into this groove of friendship. And I'm not saying take her out of school, but that was just one of the things that someone said. Like, how much can you tell her? Like, oh, it's going to get better. It'll get great in college, and that's like overwhelming because she's 13. So it's not like she's a junior.
No.
And
Right.
give it one more year
That's
and you
5
power
whole
through.
years away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's
it's 100 years in adolescent years.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, cultivating her interests and really diving into what she's interested in.
Ice skating.
Ice skating, ballroom dancing, whatever it is. I think,
But that is a common strategy parents use. Like what do you want to do?
follow
Let's go
an
do something.
interest,
Yeah.
and the people will be there.
right. But when they say I don't have any, and then you do have to be a little bit of the parent that goes, I don't care. I'm signing you up. You're doing this.
Yeah.
And I think also this generation of parenting, me being one of them, then you don't want to be the one that said, then you forced me to go to that awful thing that
Right.
everyone was mean to me. And,
I know.
it's like the same thing when now we realize these, like the Paris Hilton thing where they, thought that she was on her way to being a drug addict or worse, hanging out with older people. She might be murdered in a nightclub. We're going to have her kidnapped in the middle of the night, get her straightened out because at that time that seemed to be working with these wild childs. And now we look back and we're like,
That was systematic abuse.
that was absolutely horrible. So
Yeah.
it's like, I think it's so hard. That's what's hard now is that we do have more knowledge than the previous parents. We do know what people tried and it didn't work. And it's like, oh God, it's just.
I really think people need to get more information, really, because I think like a clinician, obviously, but no diagnosis, no treatment. If you don't have the right diagnosis, you can't possibly help that person because everything you do could go wrong. You're not given treatments are designed for specific diagnoses, and if you don't apply the right treatment to the right diagnosis, you're likely to end up with a bad outcome. And so I always think like more information. Why? Did something happen? Was there a trauma at school? What is going on with that particular child? To just say she has no friends means very, very little to me.
Yeah.
It's like what is exactly a depression? Exactly. Maybe something she was trauma. A million things occur to me as a possible cause of something.
Well, some of it is, I think, again, you have to teach your child to say. It's not even asking the opposite sex out. It's asking a platonic sex out.
Yeah.
And being like,
How
Would
to
you
form
like?
friends.
What are you doing this weekend? Would you like to go to a movie? Can I get your text? Can I get your number to text you?
Yep.
Can we all go to the game together?
But-
We have
like,
prompts in the book specifically
Oh,
for how
good.
to make
Yeah.
friends. Yeah.
because I mean, it's really like that's sad, but it has to be taught like how you tie your this is how you tie your shoes.
Exactly.
And this
Prompts
is how
are
you make
very,
a friend.
Prompts
Yeah.
are very, very useful. Again, if it is some issue with social cues, and it could be developmental, it could be really more intrinsic to that individual's genetics, whatever it is, they could get themselves in real trouble if they go or they're too enthusiastic or they just don't navigate those cues properly. This is the challenge of adolescence, right? I mean, think about being 14 and trying to know what's the
I would
right,
never want to be 14 again.
right?
No.
Never. You can't pay me. I mean, you could pay me a certain amount of money to do that, but it'd be up there.
I would want to be I would choose to do it again if I could go back to the year I was 14.
And have all the knowledge you
And
have
have
now?
all the knowledge I
No.
have now, and
No.
then pursue the things that I'm really good at, and not worry about the others. But if I had to plop into 2021,
as you were
yeah,
at
like a
14.
Freaky Friday.
Yes.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
No Freaky Friday for me. Yeah.
Because that's it. You are not you developmentally you're not picking up on things that you need to understand to be able to navigate some of these things without discomfort.
Yeah. Have you heard of this book? Someone wrote it down. I meant to look it up. Abigail Schreier's book.
About transgender?
Yes, I guess there was a thing about where there's all these girls that
Going
were
back.
transitioning to boys. What is that about?
Abigail Schreier, you want to talk about her?
I haven't read this book.
If I remember right, it is that she was documenting the sudden uptick in this phenomenon.
Right.
And she was documenting groups. It was her and Deborah So were sort of being called out for looking at people going back also, wanting to regret.
To
return,
retransition. Yeah.
And she was just documenting. She had. I've actually spoken to her.
Okay.
And she said she didn't, when she went into it, she did not have any point of view, and she just was reporting it sort of as a science reporter and was surprised at the reaction she got. But she got a lot of trouble for it.
Because people thought that she was somehow being
Transphobic.
or anti-trans.
Yeah.
And but there
I think I've talked to her. I'm pretty
but
sure.
I have kind of seen more stuff.
Oh, it's
where
way-
it's groups,
Well,
groups of girls that then all of a sudden say we're all transitioning to boys or we're all cutting our hair. I remember there was a friend of a friend, a school in San Diego, like 13 girls, almost like what the pregnancy pack was, where it makes you go, well, now maybe this isn't.
Is it a contagion?
Yeah, is it not as authentic? And this is one. Of course, there's people that are trans children, and
Yep.
then are there some that are jumping on a trend, or they're
I gotta
watching
tell you-
too much TikTok about it,
Right.
or
Whenever these big questions emerge, I really feel like it's my profession that needs to step up and get this better. What kids need puberty blockers? What kids should get through puberty and then get transitioned? What kids are part of a contagion? That should be meant.
what do you call it? Contagion?
Contagion, it's
Okay.
contagious. That is something that the medical profession, the psychiatric and the endocrinological and the pediatric community should be working on to try to get it right, try to figure out how to help a specific child's specific complex, what they come in with, how they present.
But being trans is not contagious. I want to make that.
Everything's contagious. Everything's contagious in human behavior.
I think what we're
Everything is-
saying. I don't.
It's
But
not
I
that
don't.
being
I
a
don't think.
transgender is that
I don't
all-
think it would necessarily be the thing that you go all the way with. I think we're kind of saying like, could there be? And I'll probably get in trouble for this too. Just even asking the question, could it be that just
In
a
other words,
trend, a little bit of a trend?
Let's say there are 6 kids.
Yeah.
5 of them are transgender. One is just sort of I don't know what she's doing or he's doing. But the pediatrician should be able to pick that out. Should be able to tell the difference between somebody who's transgender and somebody who's
Yeah,
not.
and you're ultimately you're advocating for more concentrated, better care.
research, better
Yeah.
care, better research. That's what I'm advocating.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm just saying, just
as
like,
opposed to just going,
like-
everybody's this. It's like,
yeah,
well, no, it's-
or like that it's just kind of you're seeing it, and it seems like maybe this, like the one thing I did see on the 60,
or by the way, or not, or it's or you could tell that it absolutely
or like
is
the
not.
60 minutes that I saw about some of the people that then were now retransitioning, and one girl said, I was watching all this stuff on social media and of these girls transitioning to boys. And all of a sudden I was like, that's it. that's what's wrong with me. And she goes to the doctor, and within months they give her the hormones, and within a couple more months she has the chest removal.
Yeah.
And she said to the doctor, like, well, why do you think that? And she's like, I just don't think being a woman is working for me anymore. And they said, okay, fine, go. We're going to support that, whatever. When 10 years ago, if someone was going to transition, they insisted that they had that much time of
therapy and stuff.
Things like that. And I think that's where people are like, and then this girl who transitioned to a boy is now living her life as a girl again, and reacted very poorly to her chest being removed. She felt like it was like she had the ghost.
Pain.
What do you call it? Like
Phantom pain.
Phantom pain,
Yeah, that type of thing. And wish that it hadn't moved so quickly.
I talked to a guy who was identified as a woman for a long time and then went back to male and didn't regret it. He didn't feel that. He was like, that's just my experience, and that was my life, and it was good. I'm okay, even though I really look back on the part where I was a woman as maybe I wasn't quite as authentic as I thought I was. I don't regret it though, which is interesting.
Right, and what's just good about life, if you feel one way for a while, that's fine. But then if you do that, I think that's where parents too of young trans kids are, because it's like they want to be so supportive, but then if they do the more permanent type of things, and then the child at 22 or later, then they can't go back to being a man or whatever.
I do think that it's a lot harder to get trans-related treatment than people make it seem. Like, I think the discussion of like whether we should allow children to go through these procedures, it's a lot more difficult than people think. It's not just like going in and being like, I'm a boy, and they're like, okay, here you go, let's make it work. Like, there's evaluations that go along with it, and I think that's part of what's missing in the discourse. Is like dear friend of mine transitioned in her early 20s, and watching her going through that process, she was questioned every step of the way. And
how long ago was that?
2016.
So just relatively recent.
Like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so whenever there's this kind of, I'm not going to say mass hysteria, but this fear of like this irreversibility, I think there's a lack of understanding of how much trans people go through to get the care that they need.
I've gotten to know Caitlyn Jenner since we were last together. And I was stunned by how long she suffered with these feelings and was unsupported and had to hide it. So 1980. In the middle of the Bruce Jenner character, she said, I created this thing, in the Wheaties box, and I was so miserable inside. I thought, wow, it's incredible when you hear when people have to suffer.
Yeah, but then also like with her, even though, it's interesting because she was doing that process and she stopped, got married again, had 2 more kids, and had some really wonderful things happen in her life as becoming a parent again and everything. And obviously you don't regret that.
Right.
But so then it's just like anything, it's weird because it's like anything, like maybe it did come at the right time officially. Maybe,
I think she would say, I don't want to speak on behalf, but I think she would say she suffered a lot.
Yeah.
But that she doesn't regret anything. And she sort of thinks of it now as almost handedness. Like I'm a right-handed and I'm this. And
whether someone is presenting in the identity that they align with, they're still a trans person, right? So if I'm a female at birth and I'm a trans man, like whether or not I get a double mastectomy and, surgery, I'm still a trans man.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the difficulty is like understanding that whether or not someone goes through with a procedure, they are still trans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because like the refrain that I keep saying throughout this book is gender doesn't define sexuality and sexuality doesn't define gender. And and also like sex doesn't define gender and gender doesn't define sexuality. So it's kind of we go into this different aspects of identity so that kids can really think deeply about each aspect of their identity. And gender is, this elusive spectrum that all of us are on. And I don't know. I guess I get nervous whenever the conversation becomes about kids because a good friend of mine has a trans kid and they do an amazing job with them in that they just allow for their kid to just kind of figure it out. They're not really making any medical decisions. They're still pretty young. And, this is also Brooklyn, so it's like a little bit
But I think the
easier to
majority
do
of
that.
parents would approach it that way.
But
then-
that seems to,
Yeah.
that would be the way I think it
yeah,
kind of
but
should
then
be.
you get very
because,
nervous around 13, like, should we get
Yeah,
involved
then
or
I
should we
think
not?
that's
Should we
where
do it? Should we-
that's where I think it's really hard. And
Yeah.
you're like, hey, whatever.
And the medical profession should be. I just, because I'm a physician, I think we should be
Yeah.
helping more. We should be helping
Yeah.
parents more. That's all I keep saying. And maybe in all these outbreaks, where large groups of girls are transitioning, maybe it's completely appropriate, and that's just what they should be doing, and that's it. And the physician should be able to help the parents understand that. You know what I mean? They should be able to help differentiate amongst whatever it is people are worried about.
Yeah, I think you're spot on in that there needs to be more accountability within the medical community in terms of just actually helping these kids.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually helping. That's a great way to look at it.
Right. But then I think that's why then sometimes they don't want to take that stand, because the people that did
Get hate.
got so
Yep,
much hate.
that's
Like
right.
the people I saw in the 60 Minutes got so much hate.
Yep. Yeah.
Me probably even having this conversation
We'll all get
with you
something.
will
We'll have said something wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
And
we'll
let
get
us
hate.
all three apologize. We mean no
Okay,
Yeah,
I
ill.
wanna-
we are cis people.
Yeah.
We mean no ill. We want to understand. We are supportive
Educate
of all.
us, please.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just we are talking to parents, and
Yes.
parents are struggling right now.
Yeah.
with this stuff.
It's interesting how many times this topic has come up over the course of this book tour.
Yeah.
It's top of mind. It's very top of mind for people.
I think it's kind of the biggest thing
I
with
think people wanna
raising
get-
children today that the previous generation did not have to. We always had to face, drug addiction and
Pregnancy.
depression and pregnancy and all that. But
STDs.
this is the biggest added thing that now. And sexuality too,
Yeah.
but this was not something that was on the forefront of conversation and kids, dealing with it.
And I think parents generally want to get it right.
Yeah.
We don't want to. We
Yeah.
don't want to screw up, and
Yeah.
like, we don't want to. When you hear about and the same thing with adults now that were in the closet or gay. Now you see parents are like. I have people come up to my show. My son's 70s gay, and da da da, and la la, and I'm like, great, like great, or nothing wrong with that. Like,
Yeah.
and it's just proud, happy. The dad's there, everything's fine, because they probably know somebody that was like, oh my God, this is what my childhood was like because I was the only gay person, and because my
Yeah.
parents didn't accept it. So then.
We don't want that to happen to another.
Yeah,
topic,
no, exactly. So I think that's why it is such a thing, but then scary if you're not.
Well, it's a hard topic to navigate,
Yeah.
especially in this book I really wanted it to be an LGBTQ resource, and as a white cis woman, it's like, okay, there's so many ways I can mess up, and I'm just kind of waiting for the moment that I get obliterated. But I think I did an okay job with this book. I don't think I stepped on any toes, at least not
We
yet.
don't intend to. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Aren't you watching 90 Day Fiancé to see how the couples, the gay men, the two couple are in Mexico are dealing with their marriage?
Oh,
You
so
up
I
to
haven't
date?
watched it that much this season, but
Come
I
on.
loved watching their affair. But I was
Well,
like,
now we're getting into cultural issues and how
well,
Mexican
they have the
fathers are
cultural.
looking at this.
I mean, not only do they
Crazy.
have the cultural issues, but they have the age issue.
That's not being talked about very much.
I mean, that one guy is like 30 years older than the other
Is he
guy.
that much older?
I mean, he looks great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's a big thing, too. Well, this has been really great. This has been awesome. The book is It Doesn't Have to Be Awkward.
Thank you to the Juicy Scoop world for asking good questions
Yes.
and worrying
Yes,
about your
Dr.
kids.
Drew and Paulina Pinsky.
I hope you buy the book. Leave it out for your kids, 12 to 20-year-old, but it's with the parent in mind, but it's really for the kids.
Audiobook in the car.
Oh,
Oh yeah, we've had some really good feedback from parents that play it in the car with their kid, and get feedback and get the conversations
And
going too.
the last thing is like, how was it working with your dad? Did you feel like you've never been closer, or was there any time where it was
She's hoping
very
to say
annoying?
it was a mess. She's really praying.
No, I wasn't. I think it sounds. I would think that it brought you closer than ever, but I don't know.
I called him every 3 weeks crying because I was worried that our relationship was only about work. I mean, I'm also on the East Coast, so and it was during COVID, and so, I would get on these calls with the whole production, and that would be my only contact with my dad, and I'd sit in my apartment just like, is this the only conversation I'm going to have with my dad this week? So that yielded a lot of crying on my part.
it worked out very nicely. We're closer because I admire what she did. She's an amazing writer. She hugely contributed to this project. I learned more about her and her recovery and all. I wanted more than I knew, and it's been a great experience.
And with your mom and dad, I always wanted to ask you. I think I asked your son this too.
Oh, here we go.
I think they have such a great relationship. Now, I wasn't raised by them, but I think they have such a great and like very sexy relationship, like very into each other. Again, in blaming your parents, do you think that they set almost an unrealistic now bar for you to have to set it where it's almost like,
Dude. So I got engaged in May.
Yes, congrats.
Thank you. I'm terrified. I just I'm now in this consumer demographic of fiance that is absolutely terrifying. It's just like all white women with bleach blonde hair and white teeth.
Yeah.
And, as soon as I got engaged, I was like, well, shit. My grandparents were both married. My parents are both married. Like, what am I walking into? Like, am I thinking about this deeply enough? Like, I am a child bride at 28. Like, this is maybe too soon. And so it's both been like an immense privilege to have parents that are still married and very much love each other. But also now it's like, how do I create a dynamic that I can live with for 30 years?
We just spent the weekend together down in Laguna, and she was asking us lots more questions about.
Well, my favorite story that your mom ever said.
I know what you're about to. I'm ready.
Which one?
She just one day I was just like, I think I was staying at your apartment when I was doing stand up. This is like 8 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And I was staying in the guest room, and we're like going to dinner.
Tell the story in front of my daughter. Go ahead.
This isn't. No, that was nothing like this. And I just remember her saying something like, "Oh, when we would come to New York, Paulina was going to school here, and she would come to our hotel room, whatever. We'd have dinner, and she'd come to the hotel room, and she's like a sophomore in college, whatever, and she wants to spend the night, like be with mommy and daddy.
I want to get out of the dorm.
And she was like, and I was like, get the hell out of here. I want to fuck Dr. Drew. And I was like, oh my God, I can't. Like, I was like, I think it's so hot and great, but then I was like, I wonder if. Because me as...
Would you feel left out?
Yes, me as my daughter, as the daughter.
Yeah.
My parents were like, Heather is the greatest. She's always included. She's always invited. She's always... It was never, ever my parents being
Exclusion.
like,
My
we
mom
would
is
like
like-
to be alone and have sexy time by ourselves. Could you leave?
Yeah.
I think that's super healthy for a marriage to be the way your mom is. But I wondered, as you, the kid, was that like annoying?
She always overshares. And then I'll call her and be like, "Oh, my period started today." And she's like, "Enough. I don't want to hear about it too much." And I'm like, "You're my mother." And she was like, "That doesn't mean I have to listen to it." And so
But you're going to listen to my stuff.
I'm
but did you
I'm going to talk about sucking your dad's dick, Yeah. It's like, "Thanks, Mom."
Oh my God.
Wow. Well, on that note, that was pretty amazing. Great way to end it. Great way to end it. Yes. So everybody get
So
the
happy
book.
we could
Everybody
bring
follow.
great stuff to Juicy Scoop.
And
always.
follow Paulina too. Tell them where they can follow you on Instagram.
My Instagram is MIZPiggy111, also on Twitter. And my website is paulinapinsky.com. I do writing coaching. So if anybody has a writing project in mind, I'm your gal.
Oh, awesome. And of course, Dr. Drew is everywhere.
Yeah. Go to drdrew.com. It's all there.
Thank you. Love you guys.
Good to
Thank
see you. Let's go sailing.
Yes.